This is Algebra 1, Lesson 14, Evaluation of Algebraic Expressions, examples 14.1 through 14.8. For example 14.1, they want us to find the value of this expression, xmp, and they're telling us that x is equal to 4, m is equal to 5, and p is equal to 2. So I will take those values, and I see that those need to be multiplied because the x is right next to the m, which is right next to the p. I could have also written this like this, but I tend to usually insert values for variables in parentheses. All right, I'm going to multiply. 4 times 5 is 20, and then we're going to do that 20 times 2, which would be 40. So the value of this expression would be 40 for these particular values of the variable. Now, it's important to remember that when you do a problem and they give you a value of a variable, it should be used for that same value every time you see that variable for that particular problem. If you change problems, the value of the variable could change. Okay, so let's look at example 14.2. 14.2 says that we have this expression, and it says evaluate. Okay, that just means exactly the same thing as find the value of, but they're going to start using that. It's a little shorter for them to write, right? It just means find the value of. And we've got 4yz minus 5 if y is equal to 2 and z is equal to 10. So I'm going to start copying things. I'm going to put the y value in as 2. And then I'm going to put my z value in as 10. Okay, now that I have all the numbers in place, this becomes an old problem. It's an order of operations problem. I know I need to do multiplications before the addition or subtraction. So let's go ahead and multiply all of these together. 4 times 2 is 8, and that 8 times the 10 would be 80. And then we're going to subtract 5. We can go ahead and do that, and we know that that is 75. So the value of this expression for these variable values is 75. 14.3. Evaluate y minus z. So see, we have some of the same variables, but in this problem, y's value has changed and z's value has changed. But throughout the problem, it's going to be these values. So I have y, which is -2, and then I have minus, and then a z, which is a -6. Now, what I want to point out here is since there's a minus in the problem, that's where it goes, right? All right, but I want you to notice that we also have these negatives. You have a negative here that has to be put in the problem, and you have this negative that has to be put in the problem. Sometimes people will see this minus and this and only write down one. You've got to put both of them down, okay? So how do we do this? Well, again, like we've done before, you could circle each of these things and treat them as an addition. So this would be -2 plus the opposite of -6, okay? As I'm going to darken it, the opposite of -6, which would be +6. -2 plus 6, you're going to subtract them and get 4. Take the sign of the one with the largest absolute value, which is 6, and it's positive. 14.4. Evaluate the opposite of a minus b minus ab if a is equal to -3. So the way the book explains this is they say, all right, you see here, this is like an opposite, right? And a is -3. So if we want the opposite of -3, then I'm going to write down a 3. Now, I usually go ahead and write all the symbols and then simplify it, but I'm going to do it the first way, the way the book does. And then they read this like an opposite of b. So the opposite of -4 would be a +4. And then they say the opposite of AB. AB would be A times B. So -3 times -4 would be +12, but they want the opposite, so that's a -12. And that's the way the book explains it and then continues on. I'm going to show you the way I would do it, and you do it the way that makes sense to you. Okay? I'm going to copy this down and put in the value of A. I'm going to copy this minus down and put in the value of b. I'm going to copy that minus down, and then I'm going to put in the value of a times the value of b. Well, more to write, but less to keep up with in my head. I know this goes together, and this goes together, and this goes together. You could do that part mentally. The opposite of negative 3 is positive 3, plus. The opposite of negative 4 is positive 4, plus. I need to do this multiplication, right? Negative 3 times negative 4 would be a positive 12, but I'm taking the opposite of it, so negative 12. I put my positives together, combine them with the negatives, take the sign of the largest absolute value, and your answer is negative 5. 14.5. I'm going to copy down the values. I've got a negative or an opposite. I'm going to put the 2 inside, minus, negative. A is negative 4, plus B is negative 6. Now, if the book were to write this, they would probably put in the brackets here instead of where I had kind of double parentheses. All right, now I'm going to do my order of operations. Probably going to clean this up first, okay? So I'm going to bring this down. This is going to be a negative 2 minus, and then I've got some things happening in brackets. All right, this opposite of negative 4 would be a positive 4, and then bring down the plus a negative 6. I'm going to go on with my order of operations and my grouping symbols. And I'm going to combine here 4 plus negative 6. They have opposite signs, so we're going to subtract them. Take the sign of the one with the largest absolute value. Now, I'm not multiplying anything, so I don't really need these brackets anymore. And I can think of this as negative 2 plus the opposite of negative 2, which would be a positive 2. And when you combine those, you get 0. You are adding opposites. And when you add opposites, you get 0. 14.6. I'm going to copy down the problem, and I'm going to insert the values. So here, x is negative 2 minus y, which is a positive 3. And it's being multiplied by the opposite of negative 4, opposite of negative 4, plus x, which is negative 2. Okay, and again, when you have the double parentheses, they will often change that to a bracket. Now, I need to clean this up just a little bit, so I'm going to say, all right, I've got a negative 2 minus this 3, and then that's times, I can take care of this part right here. The opposite of negative 4 is 4 plus a negative 2. And then I can do what's inside of the grouping symbols. So I've got negative 2 minus 3. And inside of my brackets, the signs are different, so I subtract them. Take the sign of the largest absolute value. Now I have a multiplication here. I'm going to copy down what's outside. 3 times 2 is 6. This is negative 2 plus a negative 6, which is a negative 8. For 14.7, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy in my other my values of the variable. So I have this negative or opposite on the outside, and then I have a 2, and then I have plus x, which is plus a negative 3. I could have put those in parentheses. I just left them out then, but it would be totally fine to put them in parentheses. And then that's the opposite of a. So that's going to be the opposite of negative 4. And then plus m, which is 2. Since this is a multiplication, I'm going to put these in parentheses. X is negative 3. Okay, now I need to clean this up a little bit. One, I see a multiplication inside of some grouping symbols, so I'm probably going to start there. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And let's see, we could go ahead and do this grouping symbol. This is the opposite of 2 plus a negative 3. Signs are different, so you subtract, take the sign of the larger. And then that's going to be multiplied by, let's go ahead and do this grouping symbol. This is the opposite of negative 4, which would be positive 4 plus a negative 6. Now we can go ahead and do this. Signs are different. Keep the sign of the largest absolute value. Here we have the opposite of negative 1, which is going to be a positive 1. And 1 times anything is just going to be that number. So negative 2 is your answer there. (14.8). We're going to insert all of our values. So we have a negative or an opposite there. And we're going to put in our x, we're going to put in our 4. And our a is negative 2. I'm using all the parentheses again. X is 4 minus, and then you have a negative 2. Okay, plus a, which is negative 2. And I could have put that 4 in parentheses. Okay, there's a lot of parentheses there. So again, when you have a double parenthesis, a lot of times they will put a bracket. Okay. And you can see there's an indicated multiplication right here. It's important. All right, so let's just start with our grouping symbols, our symbols of inclusion. Here we can do that. We have 4 minus a negative 2, which is really 4 plus a positive 2. Okay. And we can go ahead and do that. That's going to be 6. And we'll just go back down to parentheses since there's not any more parentheses there. Okay. And now I see I need to do multiplications before I do any addition or subtraction. So let's go ahead and multiply these numbers. 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 6 is 48. And I see that I have 1, 2 negatives, which is going to give me a positive 48. These have different signs, so I'm going to subtract them and get 46. Take the sign of the one that has the largest absolute value. So I'm going to have positive 46 as my answer.